Hey folks, Pat here from DNS. This Madison area fishing report is current as of August 18th. I got some stuff to talk about, but just a couple of quick things here. Maybe you saw this on the news, but Dane County plans to purchase 625 acres near Verona for the Sugar River Wildlife Area. Looks like there's going to be some great hunting land down there, and 2,000 feet of frontage on the Sugar River, so some great fishing opportunities. But I think really what's exciting about this is I got a PDF here. So here's a map. This is near Verona. Verona's to the northwest up here. The 18151's just off the map here. Paoli's down here in the lower right-hand corner. And so the DNR the county has a great collection of properties out this way. And with this purchase here outlined in red, you can see that it's going to connect this area up here, which is sort of near Epic, and where the Badger Mill Creek meets the Sugar River confluence right there, and then the Sugar River continues down into this other property. And I believe there's an easement here for fishing. Don't quote me on that, but anyway, then it flows into the Folk Wells area down here, which is some great trout fishing down there, which is public land, huge tract of public land that goes all the way down to Paoli. And then there's more easements after that. So basically what this does is it connects a whole bunch of public properties over here. Dane County has a long history of conservation in the county, and they do a great job in my opinion. And this sounds like a great purchase. So just wanted to thank them for that, and look forward to getting out there and fishing it for sure. I guess a couple of shop news things here. Folks, a guy came in the other day, asked me to put up this poster, and it's from this sailing group, and it's nice of them to reach out and try to let everybody in the community know. I mentioned this last week on my report, but the Marshall Park boat launch is going to be closed Wednesday, September 6th through Sunday, September 10th for a sailing event. They got over 100 boats that are going to be coming in and out of there. And yeah, I thought it was just nice that they're trying to reach out and spread the word, so you don't have too many disappointed people going down there. So yeah, take note, 6th through the 10th, Marshall Park launch will be closed. Going to be hot this next week. Come in and get your DNS coolers with a freeze pack. Keep that bait cool and happy and alive. Also, later this morning, I'm supposed to be getting some blacktail chubs back in. So got fall on the way. The fish start liking a little bigger offering, and these chubs are good and hearty. And yeah, hopefully they'll be about this size. I hear they're on the larger size. So anyway, just wanted to let you know we got blacktail chubs coming in here. I guess that does it for news. We can get to the report. So southern Wisconsin saw some heavy rain come through Monday. I'm sure we got at least 2 inches here in Madison. Otherwise, it was a nice week to get out and do some fishing. Looks like gorgeous today with some warmer temps starting this weekend and into next week. The Mendota buoy, for whatever reason, is still down. You can see here on the website, it says its status is normal operation, but it's not reading anything. It's been like that for over a week now. So hopefully they get that figured out. So I don't have an accurate water temperature for you, but temps around the chain have been in the upper 70s. And just a reminder, if on the musky side of things, if we get into that 80-degree mark, you're going to want to give those fish a break, because they don't do well in that warm water, I should say. Generally, around the chain, this time of year, the fishing reports are going to sound very similar from week to week, probably until mid-September or so. Sounds like floating weeds are causing problems depending on wind and where you're at. But I hear water clarity remains pretty good around the chain. You can see here on the Dane County beach water quality site that most beaches are open. Just yesterday, though, they had like 6 beaches closed, all on Monona. So I guess keep that in mind. Otherwise, as far as fishing goes, bluegills are being found on weed lines on Lake Mendota and suspended over deep water pretty much everywhere else, with redworms and spikes working well for those fish. Perch action remains spotty on Mendota and elsewhere. Largemouth bass are being found shallow around the chain, and smallmouth bass and walleye are being picked up in good numbers on shoreline breaks and mid-lake humps, with crawlers and fathead minnows working well for those fish. Pike are plentiful, and I haven't heard much in the way of musky action. Area streams got a good flushing from this recent rain, but most have cleared up by now and are flowing at their seasonal averages. Local rivers also came up with Monday's rain, but are currently running about where they should be for this time of year, or on the low side for sure. I guess get into a little detail here. Up in Cherokee, still a weedy mess up there, but if you want to launch a boat at the Cherokee launch, or at the School Road launch, get out into this channel. You can go up and down there, and some good action for bass and pike. I have heard about some decent topwater action from shore anglers fishing the park too. Down to the 113 bridge, we've had reports of a mixed bag of fish: walleye, perch, crappies, bass, pike. But the main target down there, of course, is catfish, and folks are definitely still getting some nice fish. A couple guys were in yesterday and had a great day down there. Otherwise, out on Mendota, like I said, the perch have been hard to find. It's been some folks report good numbers, but small size. Most of the fish they're finding are on the weed lines. I have heard some good reports from folks that are getting into some nicer fish, but they're fishing right in the weeds. And they describe it as having to punch through the weeds to get down to the fish. If you can find little pockets in the weeds, that's great. You're also likely to find some nicer size fish in the weeds, but mostly smaller fish on the weed edges. The good news around town is that the bluegills seem to be picking up the slack for the perch, and it sounds like some folks are getting some nice bluegills, good numbers, but also some of those nice jumbos. It's also nice to hear that folks are tossing a lot of those fish back to preserve the fishery. Otherwise, around the rest of Lake Mendota, largemouth bass bite remains good up shallow. Walleye and smallmouth are being picked up on mid-lake humps. Crawlers and large fathead minnows are working well for those fish, both jigging and trolling. I do hear some reports of crankbaits working as well. I've also heard a few folks picking up some nice catfish all around the lake, around 20 feet of water or so, jigging for walleyes. Tenney Park continues to fish pretty well out here. It sounds like a good action for walleyes at the breakwall after dark. They continue to dump water out of Lake Monona, so there's good current coming through here. It's pushed some fish up. Heard about some good gill action, some walleyes being picked up, a bunch of sheep's head. The Tenney Park Lagoon has some nice largemouth bass in it, and a lot of tiny bluegills if you're looking to keep a little kid busy. Over to Monona, heard about some floating weeds and slimy algae around, depending on where you are and what wind's doing. That can be a problem. Otherwise, I do hear about some gills being picked up on weed lines still, but most of the bluegill action out here has been over deep water, 15 to 20 feet down. And that's going to become a common theme as we move through the rest of the chain here. But over on Monona Bay, there's decent panfish action in there with some largemouth and pike being picked up. Over on the wall at the Monona Terrace, they're getting some nice bluegills during the day, although you do have to sort through some smaller fish to find the nicer ones. And then a decent crappie bite still going on over there, usually around dark. Over on Lake Wingra, haven't heard a ton out of there other than, the usual tons of tiny panfish, some decent largemouth, and the occasional muskie. Haven't heard much for muskie action on Monona. I think, anglers are conscious of the water temps and kind of giving those fish a break right now, but I'm sure folks are still getting some fish out there. Down the chain here on Upper Mud, it's pretty much a weedy mess over there, but folks are getting fish in the channel there, from what I hear, or on the weed line near the channel, and topwater bait through a lot of those other weedy areas. Otherwise, on Wabisa, I heard about some fish that had moved up here on the north end of the lake right after the rain. They were getting some fish up pretty shallow, but for the most part, bluegills are out over deep water or on deep weed lines. I've heard about some weeds coming up as high as 18 feet out here around the lake. So, in that 15 to 20 foot range is where you're going to find gills either suspended over deep water or along weed lines. I've heard about a little bit of walleye action down here off kind of between Babcock and Bible Camp. And I haven't heard much for muskie action down off Wabisa either. Kegonsa, same deal. Depending on where you're at and which way the wind's blowing, you might run into some floating weeds and green algae causing some headaches down there, but they are still getting some gills in that 15 to 20 feet of water, either on weed lines or suspended out over deep water. And a few walleyes I hear about over near Lake Kegonsa, but that action sounds like it's slowed down just a little bit. And down here on Lake Koshkonong, I haven't heard much coming out of the lake itself other than a couple of reports of some nice pike. It sounds like walleye fishing has been a little slow down there, but crawler harnesses and flicker shads, usually up on this end of the lake. The northeast end of the lake is a pretty safe bet this time of year. Otherwise, I've heard about some good reports both at the Indian Ford and Jefferson Dam, and in between there too, some good catfish action going on out there, and even some flatheads coming out of the area. Otherwise, up here to Beaver Dam, still hearing about some good eater catfish. Over to Crystal Lake. Where is Crystal? Oh yeah, Crystal Lake over here. Still a good yellow bass bite going on over there, and some good crappie bite. Haven't heard anything specifically out of Devil's Lake lately, but I know they were getting trout deep up there. As far as the river goes, like I said, the rain came through, pushed things up, but they're coming right back down. And right now, the flows are actually below seasonal averages again, but they're not as low as they were last week. There's a lot of sand out there and not much water when I drove over the river a couple times this last week. But anyway, the nice thing about that low water is that it concentrates fish in deeper holes. Smallmouth fishing up and down the river has been great for topwater frogs. Give it a pause here. And we're back. Anyway, yeah, smallmouth bass up and down the river has been great. Topwater frog bite's been good if you're casting to the surface. Otherwise, smallmouth are chasing around huge schools of shad. I've seen swimming out there. If you see those fish busting those shad on the surface, just toss any lure in there, really, any fishy looking lure, and hold on to your rod. It can make for some real exciting fishing. Sounds like folks are getting the usual mixed bag of fish at the Prairie du Sac Dam, and then all the dams up and down the river. Really, it's just that time of year. Some nice flatheads coming out of the river. I was up there with my son on Tuesday evening, and he got his personal best flathead catfish, so that was pretty fun. On Lake Wisconsin, I've heard about some good action up there. It's just not what folks are wanting to catch. It sounds like a lot of sheep's head, a lot of white bass, some catfish here and there. And the walleyes that folks have been getting have been on the small side, but action's action, right? And I've heard about a good panfish bite near Structure Wood and stuff like that. Otherwise, up the river, Portage to Wisconsin Dells, haven't heard of much out of there, but that's some great smallie water in there. Otherwise, up to Castle Rock Lake and Petenwell, I heard the rain that came through kind of cleared out a lot of the algae, so they aren't as green as they have been all summer. Sounds like the fishing up there has been good, producing a nice mixed bag of fish with some walleye on mid-lake points and channel edges, anywhere from 10 to 30 feet of water. Jigging and dead sticking minnows sounds most effective for those fish. And of course, again, like I mentioned, both dams up here are producing a nice mixed bag of fish. Over to the Mississippi River, it sounds like some great action for perch gills and crappies on weed lines and near Structure around shore. Otherwise, some walleye and smallmouth bass are being found on wing dams with topwater poppers and stuff like that working pretty well. Over to Milwaukee, the rain pushed the rivers up, at least the Milwaukee River, up quite a bit, but those flows are coming back down as well. The low water, again, concentrates fish in deeper pockets. I was actually up there for a family event on Sunday, stopped by a spot on the Milwaukee River I like, and picked up a couple smallmouth. But that action should be good through the rest of the summer. But out on the Big Lake, you got salmon out here. Charters are getting some good cohos and kings, and those fish are going to start moving into the harbors here pretty soon. So we'll be looking forward to that. It's always an exciting time of year. You get those big fish starting to swim up the river. I did have Port Washington here. I have heard about some decent action out on the breakwalls out here very early in the evening. So it got some cold water pushing in there, so some salmon are moving in that way. Otherwise, I don't think I've heard much else going on as far as warm water goes. As far as trout in the area goes, that rain we got had streams levels jump up just a bit, but they return to their seasonal levels pretty quickly. Wild parsnip is still a problem, but is starting to die off. But do be careful if you're out walking the streams for that. Otherwise, sporadic catches of mayflies and the occasional caddisflies are coming off mostly in the evening and early morning. But we are full on into terrestrial season, my favorite time of year. So patterns like ants, beetles, crickets, and hoppers, especially hoppers we're getting into now, are probably your best bet for fish on topwater if you don't have flies coming off. Otherwise, woolly buggers and nymphs can be effective anytime fish aren't looking up. And on the spinning gear side of things, of course, panther martins, tube jigs, rapalas are fantastic. And on the live bait side of things, it's hard to beat a redworm under a bobber. So I guess that pretty much does it for the report. I guess if you have any questions, feel free to call the shop, 241-4225, and we can try to help you out there. Otherwise, post your comments and catches below. Love to see how you're doing out there. And yeah, I think that's it. So appreciate you tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week. Take care.